So, okay. All right. So
Okay.
that's how you met Grandpa.
And that's how I met him. And then we started going out together and meeting in school. And I liked him a whole bunch. And I guess he liked me a whole bunch. And we ended up getting married.
So how long did you guys date for before you got married?
I was 20-ish, maybe a year, year and a half. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe he remembers. I don't. Yes. And we got married, and we went to live in an apartment that his father owned in Williamsburg, in Brooklyn. Way different, poorer neighborhood than I ever lived in. And I lived in an apartment upstairs over a lunchroom, of a luncheonette. And one bedroom and just a tiny living room and a bathroom, and a tiny, tiny kitchen. Of course, we were poor and we could afford this. And I had to go to work because he had to finish school.
So you
And-
didn't finish school?
What?
Did you finish school?
No, I didn't. I went to work. I got a job. I think that's when I got a job at Irving Trust Company, number 1 Wall Street. And I took the subway into Manhattan and home late at night because it was a late, I started after the bank closed. So I ran a proof machine, and what that was, like the precursor to all the computers, it was a big machine, put the checks in one at a time, and I put in the amount to see that each teller's deposits added up correctly. I proved there, the teller's totals. And then, of course, I'd come home late because we didn't start work till after the bank closed at 3. So I worked, and then we stayed there for a year. He got his master's degree. See, that's what we were working towards. He was finishing his master's degree, and he got a job in Montreal and the Jewish Vocational Service. And we moved to Montreal. We just got in a car with everything we owned in the world. And we drove up there and started living in Montreal. We moved into a
How was the culture shock? How did you feel about it?
culture shock.
Yeah, because I mean,
In Montreal,
yeah.
culture shock? No.
Coming from New York to Montreal was easy.
Yeah, it was a Jewish neighborhood.
Ah,
Well, sort of. I don't know.
I mean, there's still a bit of a culture shock when you go from like Michigan down to like LA. It's still a very different.
I guess. I
Yeah.
just was too busy. I had to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
I got a job as a bookkeeper because I had now become a full-fledged bookkeeper.
because of that one accounting
And,
class.
and I worked at some, I think it was they made dresses, garment industry, and they had models and they had shows, and that was nice. It was interesting. And I don't know, maybe I worked at the fur company first, where they made fur coats. And then I also had a job in the time that I worked before I had children. I had another job at where they made children's clothing. So that's kind of the route that I was in, the bookkeeping in the garment industry in Montreal. But when we moved there, we moved to a nice little two-family unit where the landlords lived upstairs. And we stayed there a while and Arnie was successful at his job. He was doing very well.
Mm-hmm.
They liked him, he liked it, and he was doing a good job. And it wasn't until 5 years after we were married that we finally I got pregnant with Eve. And then I started having children, 1, 2, 3. So they were all born within a 4-year period. And I was very busy taking care of them, and he was busy working. And I took care of them. That's the way it was. And then he got a job we were in Montreal for 12 years. And it was a nice community.
Mm-hmm.
I made some nice friends there. And I knew people more from around the world
Mm-hmm.
because it was more cosmopolitan.
Do you feel like it was very, like the lifestyle that you had was very typical of the like 1950s, 1960s?
No.
Like where it was like the, the husband comes back like expecting the wife to have
Oh, that?
food on the table, that sort of thing?
Well, I did that because I had 3 children to feed,
Mm-hmm.
so he could eat the meal too. I did that. It was just because I had children to take
Right.
care of. So, yes, I lived that life.
Yeah.
I didn't tell you, I wanted to tell you, when I was 13 and the war in Europe ended,
Mm-hmm.
go hop backwards. And I first learned about and saw pictures of mounds and mounds of skeletons of Jews that had been killed in the gas chambers.
Mm-hmm.
It impacted on me profoundly. And from that point on, I really did not talk about being Jewish to anybody. And wherever I lived, I just didn't mention it. I hid it. Not that it would do me any good, but anyway, that's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
I became fearful. That it could happen here.
Yeah, and I feel like that's kind of, I don't know, I feel like it might have been passed down a little bit to Dad, and even to us a little bit, where like
Yeah.
we don't really talk too much about being Jewish.
I don't think
It's
my
less-
mom telling us growing up.
I mean, it's
Like it's
Not
less
something
now.
Jewish.
it's not necessarily for the same reasons.
Yeah, it's not necessarily for the same reasons. But like I remember like when we were little, like having Mom say like sometimes it's not good to tell people that you're Jewish.
Yeah, I don't know where she got that from. The reason I don't tell people I'm Jewish is because they almost immediately associate that I'm religious with it.
Right.
Immediately what?
They immediately seem to think that I'm religiously Jewish.
Oh,
I have
Right.
met people who do not understand that there's a difference between Jewish by blood and Jewish by religion.
Yes.
exactly.
There-
It's in your DNA.
Yeah.
I have since discovered.
Yeah.
Because when we did the DNA for the Ancestry.com, I'm like well over 95% Ashkenazi Jew.
Right.
And that's in your DNA. So in my studies, let me tell you how I think that goes. Way back when King David died and then King Solomon took over, and when he died, it was split into 2 nations, the north and the south. And eventually, I forget who it was, the Babylonians or somebody, maybe the Iranians or the Syrians or one of them, came and conquered them. And when they conquered a nation at that time, they would disperse. They would chase them out of the country. They wanted the land. So they would chase, they all went. So that's the dispersal of the 12 tribes. But David's tribe, the tribe of Benjamin, went to wherever it was, the capital city, Babylon. It's still a city. Not Tehran. No. Well, one of those
Baghdad.
cities. And finally, after a few generations passed, I think it was Queen Esther, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that. But that king, a few generations down, said, "Okay, enough. Go back. You go back. Bye." And so who left then was the tribe of Benjamin. That was the greatest number of people who left, was the tribe of Benjamin. And that's us. So if anybody asks you if you have, they say they're descended from kings. Well, so am I. David. Well, maybe it was Solomon, who had a lot more wives. Somewhere along the line, it's there. So that's how I think that happened. It was the tribe of Benjamin who came back. So we're a very coherent group. Didn't marry out at all. And Vicky tells me there was a time, she just told me the story again. They were traders. They lived in Italy, I think, Jewish traders who lived, and they went up to open up the markets in Germany, and there were no Jewish women, so they were given permission to marry the local women, which they did, and that's where we got the redheads and the blue eyes from. And then years, when time went by and Jewish women started coming, it was all settled, that was off. You were no longer allowed to marry out of the Jewish faith. So it was a very enclosed group. So genetically, it's come down like that. Basically, we're a tribe, only we're dispersed all over the world, all over the world. We might have Asian faces, we might have black faces, we might have mostly white faces. But the white faces might have blue eyes and red hair, which my sister Ruth did. And cousins, Bob's kids in California here, they have she has red hair and blue eyes instead of her kids.
Wasn't Dad born with red hair? Didn't he have red hair?
Sort of. He was blonde. He was blondish. Yeah, and then it got darker. Yeah. A blonde curl. Yeah. So that's my theory. That's how I see it. So that's an impact.
Right.
But also, that's why I wrote my book, The Gods of Canaan, because I wanted to know the history. I wanted to understand what made the Bible a bestseller for 2,000 years.
Right.
Always getting my book.
Yeah.
You want to show my book? Here's the book.
You want to give a quick little summary?
Yeah. Well, it's the story of the time when David became king, and I have the characters that are around that. It's not David himself. He's in the story, but this is more about the sword bearer and other people that became part of his court eventually. But they knew him before that. Yeah. So that's what that's about. I should reread it.
It's a good book. I read it.
Haven't read it in a long time.
Yeah, it's a good book. You did a lot of research too on
I did a lot of research, and Uncle Richard took all those books. He's taken all those Bible research books. That was what he wanted. Yeah.
How long do you feel like
What?
How long do you feel like the feeling of having to hide your Judaism, how long did that last?
Always. Even now, I'm just coming out of it. And yet, when I moved here, one of the first days I was here, a man from down the lane here came by and he said, Shabbat Shalom. What? Shabbat Shalom means happy Sabbath, Saturday. Peace be with you kind of thing. And he didn't know me, but he recognized me because he's Jewish. And the people that have recognized me are either other Jews or anti-Semites. That's who recognizes you.
Did you have any experiences with anti-Semitic people?
The only experience I ever had was when I was a kid, when I beat up a girl. I had these great mittens that had leather palms and furry sides, and she said something to me, I don't remember which. I was just coming home from a Girl Scout meeting, And she said something about being a Jew or something. I knocked her down. And
She
I
deserved
ran,
it.
I ran away and ran home.
I think she deserved it.
Yeah, so I don't know who she was. I just knocked her down and ran like the wind.
Never got in trouble.
But no,
never
they
found
didn't know
out.
who I was either.
So you were a Girl Scout.
Yeah, but she didn't know that.
When were you a Girl Scout?
I was a Girl Scout when I was a girl. Yeah, I was in the Girl Scouts. The Girl Scouts were very influential for me. I went camping with them, you know, and learned. I don't know if we slept anywhere. We just went for the afternoon, but we had a meal around a campfire. Then they took me to see South Pacific on Broadway. Don't forget, I was living in Manhattan.
Mhm.
I had never seen a show. First, we went to Arsenic and Old Lace, which was a big deal. And then we went to see South Pacific with Mary Martin and Ezio Pinza, the stars. No, it wasn't Mary Martin, it was Ezio Pinza. Well, anyway, I remember he was in it. And I was, you know, like, expanded, my mind expanded, new experiences. And so they helped me in that way. And getting all the little badges and everything,
Mhm.
that helped. That was good.
How long were you a Girl Scout for?
About 4 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Then, when he was growing up, your father was growing up, I tried to become a Cub Scout. But I would not sign a paper that said I believed in a supreme being. I would not sign it, so I could not be a Cub Scout leader. I could not, unless I believed in God, I could not be a Cub Scout leader. So,
Times were different back then.
yeah. Yeah. So here I am. I'm in college. I'm in Brooklyn College. We go skip back to the chronology.
Yeah, you were in Montreal.
Yeah, we
And-
made
and
it
all
to
in
Montreal.
Was the education.
I hadn't graduated from college, but then I went, when Vicky was born, I read The Feminine Mystique when she was an infant by Betty Friedan. Have you ever read that or heard of it?
I think
It
I
was
might have
I-
read it in a college course.
very
I've
famous
heard
at
of
the
it,
time.
but I don't think I've read it.
Very
I think
famous.
I've read episodes.
I read it. I went to the phone, called Brooklyn College and City College, told them to send a transcript to Sir George Williams, which was in Montreal. And then I called Sir George Williams and asked for an application. You know, and I sent everybody money, not just a few dollars. And I used to go at night, and I took one of the very earliest television classes on early Saturday mornings, like 6 o'clock in English. So, because I had 3 kids. So either I went at night on a Wednesday night, Arnie came home and he had to take care of them and feed everybody, and I ran off to college. And then I get up on Saturday morning really early. These are 2 different classes.
Mm-hmm.
And take that class. And so in that way, that was the cost of that schooling in Montreal. Remember, I hadn't paid anything for my schooling for the first 2 years of my schooling. Now in my second 2 years of my schooling, with a major now I had declared in psychology and psychology, and then I ended up having a double one with sociology.
Is that when you started eating really healthy too? Is when you started going back to college?
I can't hear you, Justine.
Is that when you became a vegetarian?
No, that was when when they were born. They were already
So Ohio, when you were in Akron, I think.
young teenagers. You know.
When did you start eating healthy? Was it around that time or was it after in
Yeah,
Ohio?
I think he was maybe 14, and then
So Ohio,
he was in Ohio.
you were taking us to the health food stores.
Yeah,
That's when you started.
yeah, we'll get there.
You get there. That's a few years.
Actually, I wanted to
Yeah.
go back. I can't remember if we got this on video or not.
I can't hear you.
I can't remember if we got this on video or not. Tell us about When you first heard about the war,
Oh, the war.
yeah, you said something about the radio.
Oh, yeah.
Do we
Okay.
get that
Going,
on
Oh,
video?
hold
going
on. Give
back
me
to my childhood.
yeah. Give me 2 seconds.
No,